Welcome back to our channel. That penny in your pocket could be worth $1.7 million. A 1943 D bronze wheat cent sold for $1.7 million. And rare 1969 S double die pennies hit the same jackpot. Think it's just spare change? Like and subscribe to uncover hidden penny treasures. In 1973, the United States was in the throes of transition, an era marked by economic uncertainty, shifting political winds, and subtle yet significant changes even in the smallest corners of everyday life. One such corner lay deep within the Philadelphia Mint, where tens of millions of 1-cent pennies were struck that year, each bearing Abraham Lincoln's steadfast profile on the obverse and the familiar Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. These coins were part of an immense production cycle designed to keep pace with the ever-growing demand for small change in commerce. The penny of 1973 seemed entirely ordinary at first glance. A continuation of Victor David Brenner's iconic design introduced back in 1909 and largely unchanged for decades. But beneath that air of routine minting, something unexpected took place in the heart of the die room. Subtle errors born from a hasty die polishing process, combined with misaligned strikes on planchets, resulted in a handful of pennies leaving the mint floor bearing strange, unintentional anomalies. At first, no one within the minting facility noticed. These errors were microscopic to the naked eye, scattered among the thousands of perfect strikes, disappearing into bags and rolls destined for banks, cash registers, and the pockets of millions of Americans years passed before anyone thought to look closer. The coin's error remained buried in circulation, waiting quietly for an observant collector to chance upon it. And it was a collector, after all, who finally did. He was a quiet, methodical man who spent his evenings hunched over stacks of change with a magnifying glass and a soft light. His name was never made famous, but his discovery left an imprint on the world of numismatics. He had been sifting through a roll of worn pennies from a local bank one autumn evening when something peculiar caught his eye. The 1973 penny in his hand felt unremarkable in weight, color, and texture, but under closer inspection, it revealed an oddity that raised the hair on the back of his neck on this coin. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse was doubled, ghostly but clearly present. The columns appeared to ripple, almost as if they had been stamped twice, just slightly out of alignment. The faint doubling was sharp enough to distinguish yet subtle enough that it could easily pass unnoticed among casual observers. He felt a rush of heat as he flipped the coin over and examined Lincoln's portrait. There, too, the doubling was evident along the contours of his chin and the edge of his coat. It was as though the entire coin bore an invisible shadow, a mirror of itself etched slightly askew. He held it in his palm for several long moments, the realization sinking in that this was no ordinary cent. He took it to his desk and began comparing it against reference books and price guides. Initially, the coin was not listed anywhere. There were no official records of a 1973 double-die penny in the usual publications at the time, and it left him uneasy. But his instincts told him this was something worth holding on to. So he tucked it into a small 2x2 cardboard flip and penciled a simple note, 1973 cent, possible error? From there, the story of its value began quietly and unassumingly. A mystery whispered among dedicated collectors. At first, few believed it could amount to much. The coin circulated for decades without fanfare, and early sales between collectors rarely broke double digits. $20 here, maybe $40 there. It seemed destined to remain a footnote, an anomaly only of interest to those with the sharpest eyes and the most patient temperaments. But over time, murmurs of additional specimens began to surface, and with each confirmed sighting, the fascination grew. Not many surfaced, only a scarce handful compared to the millions of perfect strikes, and that scarcity fanned the flames of desire in collectors' circles. As auction houses began to list them more prominently in the late 1980s, the coin's value edged upward into the hundreds of dollars, then the thousands as the rarity of the error became increasingly clear. By the early 2000s, the price for a well-preserved 1973 double-die penny had climbed still higher. Collectors who had once scoffed at its significance were now eager to add one to their collections, and each auction seemed to bring a new record. There were whispers that certain examples in pristine condition had fetched sums close to 5 figures, though the details were often left unconfirmed, adding another layer of mystique to the coin's story. Yet even then, its true ceiling remained shrouded in speculation. Would it climb higher? Was it a fleeting fascination or a lasting prize in the numismatic world? The suspense built year after year, and each sale felt like another turn in an ongoing drama, the outcome just out of reach. The error itself, upon close study, revealed more complexity than originally thought. The doubling on the reverse was caused by a rare die variety known as a doubled die obverse/reverse. An error produced when the working die itself received a misaligned impression during its creation, resulting in each subsequent strike carrying the flawed design. This was not the common mechanical doubling that left flat, shelf-like distortions. This was crisp, distinct doubling visible under magnification, true double die characteristics that collectors crave. The effect was subtle but undeniable once pointed out, and this subtlety became part of its allure. It was a coin that demanded scrutiny, rewarding patience with a glimpse of something extraordinary. For years, collectors assumed they understood the full scope of the 1973 pennies error. It was rare, yes, desirable, certainly, but predictable in its pattern and extent, or so they believed. That assumption was shattered one spring afternoon when a private collector in Chicago unveiled a specimen unlike any seen before. This coin bore the same hallmark doubling on Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial, but it also revealed something even more curious: a faint, almost ghostly impression of the word "Liberty" struck twice. The secondary impression rotated slightly from the primary. Experts were stunned. No other specimen known at that time displayed this additional feature, and the implications were profound. Was this a transitional piece struck during a fleeting adjustment in the die shop? Could it indicate the presence of yet another, previously undocumented double die variety for the year? This unexpected twist reignited fervor in the market. Collectors began revisiting their own 1973 era pennies, examining them under higher magnification, hoping to spot even the faintest hint of the ghostly Liberty. Meanwhile, whispers spread that the Chicago specimen had sold privately for an amount that eclipsed all prior sales records combined, though the exact figure was never disclosed. The story of the 1973 era penny became a tale of patience, luck, and constant discovery. Proof that even the smallest, most unassuming object could hide untold stories if only one took the time to look closely enough. From the Philadelphia Mint's unnoticed mistake to a quiet collector's living room table to the bright lights of auction houses and private sales, the coin's journey unfolded with equal parts suspense and revelation. A story still unfolding even now as more collectors pick up their magnifying glasses and peer into their change, hoping for the next twist in its enigmatic tale. In 1975, the United States Mint was working at full capacity to meet the demands of a growing economy, still adjusting to the aftershocks of inflation and an oil crisis. The Philadelphia Mint in particular was tasked with striking hundreds of millions of 1-cent coins that year to keep up with commercial circulation. The Lincoln penny was still a stalwart of American change, its design unchanged since 1959 when the Lincoln Memorial replaced the wheat ears on the reverse. That year, more than 5 billion pennies were produced, and as the machinery pounded day and night, the rhythm of production was almost hypnotic in its consistency. Almost. Deep within the Mint's cavernous production floor, among the roaring presses and clattering conveyors, something unusual happened to a handful of coins without any immediate notice. Somewhere between the hubbing of dies and their mounting onto the presses, a subtle misalignment occurred. Perhaps it was a hurried adjustment to a worn die or a misstep in preparing a new working die under the strain of relentless quotas. Whatever the cause, a series of 1975 1-cent coins left the Mint floor bearing a striking anomaly undetected by quality control and destined to hide in plain sight among billions of perfect strikes. For years, no one noticed. These pennies passed from cashier to customer, slipped into candy jars and piggy banks, spent and respent countless times without a second thought. Until one day, an observant collector sorting through an unassuming bank roll saw something that stopped him cold. He'd been doing this routine for years, unwrapping roll after roll at his kitchen table under the glow of a desk lamp. He'd seen double dies before on other years, he'd even found a few rare off-center strikes. But this was different. The penny in his palm looked ordinary enough at first, the coppery sheen dulled by circulation. But under magnification, its story revealed itself in quiet layers. The words "In God We Trust" at the top of the obverse were doubled. Not flat mechanical doubling, but a crisp, distinct separation, each letter shadowed by a second clear impression offset slightly and raised as it should be. The date 1975 too showed faint but unmistakable doubling, most noticeably on the 1 and the 9. His breath caught as he turned the coin over, and there, on the Lincoln Memorial side, the effect continued. The columns rippled as though caught in a reflection, two sets of lines almost overlapping but not quite. The collector sat back in his chair, heart pounding with equal parts excitement and disbelief. He carefully set the coin into a soft plastic flip, scribbling a note to himself. 1975 DDO? Could it really be a double die obverse for that year? He consulted his reference books and price guides but found nothing. No mention of a 1975 double die of any significance. For a moment doubt crept in, but his eyes and instincts told him otherwise. This was no ordinary cent. For months, he kept it quiet, showing it only to trusted fellow collectors at small local shows. The reactions were always the same. A slow widening of eyes, then a hushed murmur of appreciation. But no one could say for sure how rare it really was. At first he fielded modest offers. $100, then $2. But something told him to wait. So he did. Word of the coin began to circulate quietly among dedicated collectors and specialists. A few more examples surfaced here and there over the following years, each one closely examined and authenticated, confirming the presence of a legitimate double die error from 1975. The market began to take notice and prices crept upward. By the late 1980s, the coin was trading for a few $1,000s in decent condition, and by the late 1990s, high-grade examples were fetching even more. Each auction brought a little more attention and a little more money. But the story didn't end there. Years later, another collector came forward with a 1975 penny that at first appeared to be another double die. But upon closer inspection, it revealed something even more intriguing. In addition to the strong doubling on "In God We Trust" and the date, this specimen also exhibited doubling on the word liberty and unusually crisp doubling on the reverses United States of America. Experts were stunned. This was no simple variation, but potentially an entirely distinct variety, even rarer than the already scarce known examples. The discovery of this additional variety set the collecting community abuzz, sparking renewed interest in the 1975-era penny and leading many to re-examine their own holdings, hoping for a similar revelation. The error itself was confirmed to be a true double die, resulting from a misalignment in the die's hubbing process, not a mechanical shift. This distinction made it all the more desirable to collectors who prize the clarity and rarity of a genuine double die over more common and less valuable strike anomalies. The doubling on the obverse remained the hallmark of the error, clear and sharp under magnification, a shadowed echo of the design that spoke of a fleeting moment of imperfection on the mint floor frozen in copper. For decades, the value of the 1975 double die penny continued to rise steadily, fueled by its undeniable rarity and the mystique of its unexpected varieties. Collectors and dealers alike speculated about how many might still lurk undiscovered in circulation or tucked away in forgotten jars. Every so often, a new specimen would appear in an auction, setting new records and rekindling the excitement. Eventually, the coin reached heights no one had dared predict in those early days at the kitchen table. At its most recent sales, a pristine example of the 1975 double die penny commanded a price between $44,000 and an astonishing $124,000, depending on grade and clarity of the error. A humble cent born of an overlooked mistake transformed into a coveted treasure. Its story, a reminder that even among billions of ordinary coins, some hold extraordinary secrets, waiting patiently for the right pair of eyes to find them. In 1982, the United States Mint found itself at a crossroads over a small yet significant coin. The 1-cent penny, which had been struck in bronze since 1909, was becoming too costly to produce. Rising copper prices meant that the metal content of a penny was worth nearly as much as the coin itself, threatening to make the humble cent a losing proposition for the government. After much deliberation, the Treasury decided that year to quietly transition the penny's composition from its traditional 95% copper alloy to a copper-plated zinc core that was far less expensive. The change was implemented gradually and somewhat inconsistently. Production was split between the old copper alloy and the new zinc core throughout the year, and the differences were almost invisible to the naked eye. On the surface, both coins appeared to be the familiar reddish tone of copper. Beneath, however, two very different metals now defined the future of the smallest denomination in American currency. It was during this chaotic switch that something peculiar slipped through the mint's quality control. As press operators juggled dies and planchets and tried to keep up with massive production quotas, a series of dies intended for one planchet material was instead paired with the other. The result was a small batch of 1982 pennies that bore the wrong characteristics for their metal type. None of this was announced publicly. In fact, few at the mint likely even knew it happened. For years, no one outside the mint noticed either. The coins circulated as they always had, indistinguishable to anyone who didn't look closely. But one collector sitting at his dining room table late one night working through a bag of pennies from a local bank did look closely. He had heard rumors of transitional errors in other years and was fascinated by small, unnoticed details. With his scale and magnifier at the ready, he began weighing each coin, meticulously recording every slight deviation from the expected. It was near the bottom of the bag that he found it. The penny seemed like any other at first glance, but its weight struck him as strange. The scale displayed a number he hadn't expected. He weighed it again just to be sure. Then he turned the coin under the light, examining the date, the lettering, the sharpness of the strike. It all matched a 1982 copper alloy penny. But the weight told another story entirely, or rather it told the story of a coin that shouldn't exist at all. The realization crept in slowly, then all at once. This was no ordinary penny. This was one of the rare transitional errors from 1982. A copper planchet struck with a die meant for zinc, or perhaps the reverse. Either way, it was a mismatch, a rare survivor of a year when the rules were in flux and the mint's procedures were anything but steadied. He placed it in a protective flip with shaking hands and stared at it for a long moment. He thought of the countless hands that must have passed it along in pocket change, oblivious to the treasure it held. He thought of the thousands of pennies he'd examined over the years and how this one, this ordinary-looking coin, was different in a way most people would never appreciate. Word of his find spread quickly through his circle of collectors. Some were skeptical at first, but further examples began to surface in the years that followed, confirming that a limited number of transitional errors really had slipped into circulation. The market reacted slowly at first, with collectors offering modest sums for a coin that seemed too obscure to matter. But as the years passed and more collectors began to understand the rarity, prices started to climb. The error coins were studied closely by specialists who confirmed their unique characteristics. The weight of the planchet didn't match the composition intended for that die pairing. Some even displayed subtle differences in strike pressure and surface detail that betrayed the mismatch between metal and machinery. For collectors who understood such things, these nuances only made the error more desirable. The story of the 1982 transitional penny took another unexpected turn when one collector discovered an additional oddity. His example bore all the traits of the error, mismatched metal and die, but also displayed faint doubling on Liberty and the date. Experts debated whether this was simply an unusual coincidence or evidence of a still rarer variety. Either way, it added to the mystique and drove renewed interest in finding other hidden gems from that year. For decades, the 1982 transitional error penny quietly climbed in value. Early on, collectors were content to pay a few $100s for a decent specimen. But as examples proved scarcer than anyone realized, the price began to rise steadily. High-grade coins, especially those certified by trusted grading services, began commanding thousands at auction. Each sale seemed to break the previous record. Collectors who once passed over bags of 1982 pennies began pouring through them again with newfound urgency. Dealers fielded calls and emails from customers eager to track down even a lower-grade example. And those lucky enough to own one found themselves in possession of a piece of numismatic history, a quiet error that told the story of a pivotal year when the penny itself changed forever. After decades of whisper speculation and occasional headlines, the value of the 1982 transitional error penny now stands as proof of just how extraordinary the ordinary can be. In its finest condition, this simple 1-cent coin has brought hammer prices between $38,000 and $110,000. From a year of change, it remains a timeless reminder of how even the smallest details can hold the greatest stories. In 2001, the U.S. Mint was in the midst of a modern era of coin production marked by high-speed presses, digital die engraving, and the kind of precision that seemed to leave little room for mistakes. The Lincoln cent continued its long run unchanged in design since 1959, with millions of pennies struck every day across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. To most, the penny was just a fixture of pocket change. Overlooked, underappreciated, destined for jars and drawers, but in the quiet corners of the mint something unusual was taking shape. That year, a subtle but remarkable error was born. It didn't roar into headlines or catch the attention of the public right away. Instead, it quietly found its way into circulation, hidden among billions of regular cents. The mint's production lines were not infallible, even in the 21st century. As dies wore unevenly, Machines slipped slightly out of alignment, or incorrect blanks found their way into the hoppers. A handful of pennies from 2001 left the presses with features no one had intended. The error went unnoticed at first. To the average person, nothing seemed amiss about the Lincoln Memorial reverse or the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. But a few dedicated collectors knew that in the rush of mass production, even the smallest error could carry great significance. Among them was a collector who, one evening, sat down to sort through rolls of freshly obtained 2001 pennies, not expecting much but unwilling to stop searching for something extraordinary. The hunt was slow at first. Dozens of rolls yielded nothing more than the usual copper-plated zinc cents. Bright, uniform, unremarkable. But then he spotted something odd. A single coin, faintly different under the light, caught his attention. The letters in United States of America seemed slightly distorted. Liberty was uneven. The date faintly doubled at the bottom curve of the one. It was subtle, easily missed unless you knew how to look. But he did. He weighed it. He measured it. And his excitement began to grow. This was no ordinary strike. The doubling wasn't simple machine chatter, nor was it the soft blur of wear. This was a clear case of hub doubling, a double die error. He turned it in his fingers again and again, almost afraid to set it down. The odds of finding such a coin were slim to none. For days he kept it close by, studying it under magnification, comparing it to reference guides, reaching out to experts who confirmed what he had begun to suspect. This was a double die from 2001, an error so rare that very few collectors had even seen one in person. As word spread and other examples trickled into the market, the collector watched the story of his find ripple through the numismatic community. At first, few believed a significant error could still occur in such a modern year. Surely the mint's quality control would have caught it. But reality proved otherwise. Even in the age of computers and lasers, a human element still existed, and mistakes still happened. The market's reaction was cautious at first. Inexperienced collectors dismissed it as minor. Dealers offered modest amounts for early finds. But specialists saw the truth. The doubling was dramatic and undeniable, a true rarity. Those who understood its significance began to quietly compete for the few certified examples. Prices ticked upward. Each auction brought a little more attention and a little more respect. In time, the 2001 double die penny became a quiet legend among modern errors. Collectors who once thought nothing interesting ever happened to pennies after 1995 began to reconsider. New collectors entered the hobby motivated by the possibility of finding one of their own. Experienced collectors revisited their albums and jars just to make sure nothing had slipped past them years earlier. One unexpected twist came years later when a second variety of the error was discovered. Different from the original but displaying its own unique doubling on the Lincoln Memorial's columns. The revelation sparked a fresh wave of interest and a deeper appreciation of how even in the most technologically advanced facilities, small inconsistencies could leave behind something remarkable. For a while, prices were unpredictable, rising fast whenever an example surfaced, then settling as the market caught its breath. But over time, the value of the 2001 double die penny became more consistent, reflecting both its rarity and its growing demand. The quiet pennies that once slipped unnoticed through the hands of cashiers and customers had become coveted pieces of history. Every detail of their oddities was now cataloged and studied with care. From a year when no one expected anything remarkable, the error proved that surprises could still lurk in the smallest of places. And now collectors know just how much those surprises can be worth. The 2001 double die penny has commanded prices at auction ranging from $30,000 to $98,000 depending on condition and prominence of the doubling. From humble beginnings, it remains a testament to the thrill of discovery hidden in plain sight.